Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, dietary needs expert, certified meetings manager, certified food protection manager. I have searched the globe to find people and businesses who are creating safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for their employees, guests, and communities. In each episode, you will find authentic conversations about how food and beverage impacts inclusion, sustainability, culture, community, health, and wellness. I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to cover it all. Are you ready to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line? If so, let's go. Today's guest is a gentleman, a chef from South Africa who I met with inside the Eating at a Meeting Facebook group. When he commented, I actually asked everybody that week, I said, what are you celebrating this week? What did you do good? Or what happened to you that was good? And his response is, I survived a heart attack. And I'm like, excuse me, what? So Chef Francois Agenbach, I know I mutilated that. He is with the CSIR International Convention Centre and he culinary concierge in Pretoria, South Africa. I actually had the opportunity to speak in that center years ago, but it was before you arrived. So everybody, welcome to Chef with me here today. Hello, Chef. How are you?
I am fantastic. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. Okay. We've been having this fantastic conversation for the last 15, 20 minutes. But before we get to that, I want to make sure everybody knows you're doing well. You've survived your heart attack.
I'm fantastic. I'm fit. I'm healthy. I'm doing really well. I've been back at work for nearly a month already again. So all good. All engines running. I'll probably have a checkup around the middle of May just to make sure that everything's running smoothly and all the arteries are doing what they should be doing. But otherwise, I'm perfectly fine. I'm really blessed. It was a shock. It was unexpected, but the recovery process and the support I've received since then has been phenomenal.
Awesome. Well, so glad that you were able to make that comment on my post to say that you were still alive. But the other part too on that comment was the fact that you said, and I'm going to quote you here, now more than ever, it will serve me to be more aggressive and proactive in my drive to transform food and beverage offerings in the local meetings and events industry. And I wanted to start off with that too, because it kind of rolls into what we were talking about earlier before we started what does really being aggressive, transforming the food and beverage offerings, what does that mean? And what are you seeing? What do you want to see done differently?
Well, that is such a massive question. First of all, when I made the statement, I kind of went, what do you actually realize what you have just stated? I mean, that is such a bold statement. That is taking such a large portion of the industry by the horns and trying to redirect it. And I think the most important thing is for me realizing that it is time, it's long time, it's actually overdue that we start giving food its due place in the events and meeting industry, but also in general, in life, in everyday living, in everyday interactions, affording it the place it deserves, and that sustenance is not just scoffing down something in the hope that you will feel fulfilled. It serves a massive purpose. There's so many aspects to it that we can benefit from just by redirecting small portions at a time of what we eat, how we eat, when we eat it. And that is my goal. That is something that I am really driving to do, realizing the challenge ahead, making that statement sort of went, now you've gone and done it. Now you're going to deliver.
I'm right there to support you though. So whatever you need from us.
Fantastic.
Which kind of leads me into, what our friend, I'm going to say Janet Spearstad. So I think she was the year after me. So thank you for Peter inviting us both over there. to speak with his group. But if anybody doesn't know Janet's all about brain food and neurological, creating events that are neurologically healthy for all of us. And so tell them what you did before you actually met Janet and with that event and what you learned.
It was interesting. I received the brief. I was actually an attendee to the course. The course was based on the neuroscience within eventing and the role that it plays. And when I received the information from Peter Swart, the client at that point, I sort of looked at it and I thought, here's an ideal opportunity to show to people that food plays a pivotal role in the outcome of a specific event, and it can be customized to meet the requirements and serve the purpose and goal. So I went on a bit of a research spree, and I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to combine certain items to get different results. And we ended up on a 3-day conference presenting a menu that was wholly focused on brain food, improving neurological function, making sure that neurofatigue doesn't set in during the middle of the day. And it was phenomenal. The response was unbelievable. On day 3, I remember Janet saying, this is the most energized group she's ever had on day 3. She hardly knows what to do with us. We need to give her some space so that she can actually finish, because the brain functionality was at such a high level on day 3 that it was better than day 1. And it's purely because we looked at people's diet for that specific course. We adjusted and customized it, and it served such a phenomenal purpose.
Okay, so why can't we do that for all of our events? Or why isn't that done for all of our events? That's a loaded question.
It's not a loaded question. It's actually a very valid question. And what we've done is systematically introduce these items on a small scale into menus to try and make it an overall experience. And I think the biggest reason it's not is traditionalist thinking of healthy food is tasteless and bland and unpresentable, and there's not a lot of value to it. It's overrated. But we've snuck that into our menus overall at the ICC and introduced these items in such a way that we don't really promote it, but at the end of an event, we engage with guests and find out, how was your experience? How was the food? How did you feel? And especially after your first and second teas around lunchtime and your afternoon teas, to see, do we see a change in people's energy patterns? And it has definitely impacted on some of the people and some of the guests we've hosted. But again, there's the expectation of give me a wholesome meal with all the fats and starches and sugary desserts, which we still have to navigate and work on the mindset.
Well, exactly. And I mean, I know everybody's heard me say this before, but it's our food and beverages are number one expenditure in events, and hands down, and with audiovisual being next. And maybe they waver, on what your event is, but it's the thing that we spend the least amount of time on. And we give you, hopefully we're good enough and we're giving you, hey, here are our dietary needs of our people, but we want this thing, we want this, and we just give it to you or to the CSM and say, here, design it. I seriously, I would say, I'm going to guess, this is totally a guess, that 90% of planners do not talk to chefs before they pick the menu, and which is, I think, is a detriment.
They are missing out on an unbelievable resource that could absolutely benefit and change the guest experience, even host experience. And it is unfortunate. I don't think you're far off. I think it's closer to 95%. We have the odd person who would engage. And what I've found over the last couple of years with some of the clients who have allowed us access to their actual clients. So some of the planners saying, you know what, sit with my client and let's see where we get to. And on those engagements, I found that 90% of the time, we've managed expectation far better when chefs were involved, considering the large impact of food on their event, not just the cost factor, but also the experience factor. And when chefs start getting involved, people's minds open. They go from just give us something wholesome to, you know what, I would actually like something specific. Is there something you can do for us that stands out, that identifies this event on a memory scale, on an Instagram scale?
Okay.
So chefs, yes, we are quite underrated, but I can understand that, because not all personalities are intended to engage with planners and hosts. That it could be challenging. Not all of them are there, right. But at least the opportunity to test what it is exactly that they are wanting and what the goal of the event, the business event or even social event is, and being able to customize within that brief gives us a freedom to create, and gives us the opportunity to introduce to hosts, guests, and visitors new experiences.
Mm-hmm. Well, and getting to the chefs is sometimes very challenging, and it's, and I think you brought up a good point, because sometimes maybe it's a third party planner that says, you can't talk to our client, we're the go-between, or it's, whoever it is that's there. But sometimes it's the CSM on that, on the venue side as well. So we've got to open up that communication level, because these are the two people, when you look at the event food chain, the planner and the chef are pretty much on top and bottom there, because there's all the people over here. And then from you is the line cooks, the banquet captains, and the servers. And it's that axis. Oh, I'm really liking this description. It's the axis is the eater and the chef are right there aligned.
They are more often than not the key role players within an event, other than obviously your speakers, the importance of the theme. Right. All of those has its place, but in the actual operational flow, those are the people that go through the motions and ensuring that everything is running like clockwork, and everyone is getting exactly what they need at the right time. So the relationship between them should actually be some of the closest relationships of the whole event. And once that is broken or interrupted, I think it leaves room for interpretation as opposed to understanding. And interpretation is a very dangerous area, because people could think this is why X, Y, and Z is happening in terms of food. They're giving us the chef has carte blanche, and this is what he's giving us. What a disappointment. Where the reality comes when the chef and the CSM are in line and they're sharing the same vision and the same energy, there won't be that interpretation. Everyone will know this is well planned. Everything is going according to plan. The food and beverage offerings are in line with what the customer profile is like, what the event profile is like. All of these line up. So it is a holistic experience as opposed to isolated incidences.
I like I said, the holistic view of that is really important, because the food does play into the entire experience, not just, and as we're rethinking our events because of COVID and physical distancing and things like that, and we're eliminating potentially name badges and things like that. But sometimes some of these things became so much more important than the food and beverage. And that food and beverage can have such a positive experience on that. One of the things that you said earlier too, and we in my pre-conference conversation or survey is, sustainability wise, and as well as dietary needs. I mean, these both play into the food and beverage that we're doing. But so I want to talk about the cost of that customization that you did, but also the cost of sustainability and can both be done within the budgetary framework that a planner has?
It can definitely be done within in budgetary restrictions or within the budgetary space. What it does take is it takes a little more initiative. It takes a little bit of resizing, reportioning, looking at things slightly different. But within all of that, the communication of what the experience in terms of food and beverage is about is the most crucial part. And the lack thereof creates a misperception, and that can result in a failure. In my view, what COVID has exposed is the lack of sustainability within the food and beverage sector in terms of planning, in terms of execution, in terms of preparation, and all the pillars of sustainability, not just economic, but also social and financial. All the pillars work together. And that has set me on a drive to say, but how do we present this in a sustainable way? First of all, without additional expense to the end user, because that obviously causes resistance. But within that process, inclusively giving the venue or the establishment the opportunity to create, to innovate, to step forward. And the potential is there. For me, COVID has presented more opportunity than negativity. Personally, I see a lot more opportunity having come from it. Finally, the focus of it's got to be a buffet, which is that sort of this, if it's not a buffet, it's not a conference, we don't like it. It's now sort of forced it to say, okay, but wait a minute, maybe there are risks that we weren't aware of in the past. Maybe we should be looking at it differently. But it's also created the opportunity for venues, host venues, chefs, food and beverage managers and captains and the likes to say, but how do we create this without creating a new problem? And that was my biggest concern right from the offset. Mm-hmm. If we're going pre-packed, I don't want to create a new problem. We could use all the horrible packaging that is commercially available all over, or we could actually do some research and find items that are not just biodegradable, because that's a whole different conversation.
Right.
But literally looking at packaging that's actually compostable, that serves a greater purpose than biodegradable, because there's processes involved that a lot of people don't recognize. They think going biodegradable is the best solution available, and it really isn't. If you're not following the proper processes, you're still sitting with a new problem. And we as a team, between the CSIR ICC marketing team, the business development team, the whole management team, actually said, we realize we've got to change what we serve, but we have to research that whatever we are serving is a solution and not a creation of an extended problem.
I love that. I mean, because that makes you look, again, holistically at your entire event. And I saw something, I think it was on Thrillist the other day, about this woman in New York is like reducing your waste and just reducing your waste overall. And she says she has maybe one trash can full of waste in her house, in her apartment, a month. I that may be a little bit of an exaggeration, but even like toothbrushes and all these other things, but looking at how can you get your products and services, your food and beverage items without having to use all the plastic bags, or what can you do to reduce your waste personally, but also in your events and in the kitchen?
Well, I think and I'll never call it the complete death, but the semi-death of the buffet I would love to see the international statistics on the reduction of food waste based on the fact that buffets are no longer in use. I think it's massive personally. I've tried to find some research on that, but obviously those will be things that are kept under wraps.
Yeah.
It won't be promoted. But personally, I think food waste has been limited, has definitely been reduced, and all the associated impact of food waste that people don't talk about. So for me, it's not a bad thing. Unfortunately, we're still sitting with that traditionalist approach of people want buffets. How are we going to give them buffets? And it's, in my view, it's time to move on from that. It's time to say, well, let's focus on safe food. Let's focus on presenting it in such a way that when people experience it, when they look at it, they don't feel that they got less value.
Right.
As long as we meet the value expectation, we're in a good place. And you'll always have the comments. But as things progress, as we do this more and more, and as more venues actually start discovering that there are simpler solutions that are more cost effective, hopefully at some point the breakthrough will come and we'll say, look, let's put buffets back where they were, and that's on the Sunday family restaurant table.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so can you give us some examples of that? Because, if you have a large conference and your venue is pretty large, right? But you want to get, and maybe this comes back to rethinking the agenda and how fast we have to put people through lunch line, right? Or dinner. But is that, action stations? Is it plated? Is it, what does that look like to you? And one or two examples. Yeah.
So obviously, for me, it's a combination of all of those.
Okay.
Because in my view, to give the guest a value proposition that still gives the experience of the typical old buffet, I think action stations is an absolute must. It plays a role. It needs to be there. It creates that interactivity that people value. Mm-hmm. Having pre-plated meals ready on a different station is another experience, because what we often forget is every event has different personalities. Mm-hmm. For one, I don't like to queue personally. Right. So if there's something that I can go to, pick up and walk away, I'm the happiest person in the world, because I don't have to interact with people that I maybe don't know or don't feel comfortable to. Other people thrive on the interaction. They want to stand in a queue because they can talk to the people behind them. They want to wait in line for food. So it's different for every person. And if we manage to get our food and beverage offering to the point where we cater to all of those experiences in one go, we can have so many more people feeling that their needs were catered to. Mm-hmm. Whether they enjoy which aspect, whatever aspect they enjoy, they were catered to. So I would not say we can look at this in isolation and say, you know what, let's just do action stations. Let's just do pre-plated. Minor combinations of them. Mm-hmm. And if you manage your costs well and your communication is good, you're not going to have that challenge, and you will still limit your waste, which is, for me, something that the passing of the buffet has been great in the sense that now I can limit waste.
Right.
We can manage portions properly. People are not overeating. And in fact, we went to pre-packed lunches, and the biggest comment we're still getting is, it's too much food.
Wow.
And I was stunned and surprised initially when I said, okay, so we've taken away all the options you had of mm-hmm. choosing different starches and proteins and whatever you prefer, and we've given you sort of a generalist two protein, one starch, 2 veg, and a salad option, and it's too much food.
Wow.
We went, that's a win. Mm-hmm. That's a win.
That is. And that reminds me of a conversation with food and beverage director from the Broadmoor in Colorado, is that they reduced their list of options down to a smaller thing, like you said, and people were just fine with it. They don't need, less is more, actually.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The experience, and this I pull from restaurant and hotel experience. A lot of food and beverage establishments want to be everything to everyone. Mm-hmm. Instead of specializing in something for which you are known, and people will go there just for that. And I think events venues, meeting venues have that potential. But we want to be everything to everyone, because we believe by giving more variety, we're catering to a bigger group. In actual fact, when we should be saying giving a better experience overall and focusing on all sorts of personalities, we'll gain better value than giving a wider variety.
Right. Yeah. Because then and people are wanting and craving that personalization. And by not having to do the big plethora of stuff and doing that, you can do that customization or look at the menu holistically across the board and design it to meet multiple needs potentially, but also customizing it at the same time. Is that right?
That's exactly. And with action stations, the first thing that comes to mind is an action station. Yes, but I've got to wait. No, you don't have to. We can pre-pack some of those action station food and you can literally just pick them up and move along. It doesn't have to be what your mind is telling you or what tradition is telling you it should be. Now, if it's an action station, I have to wait in queue and I don't feel like it. It doesn't have to be that. You can still cater to all different needs without just forcing people to follow a single line and just look at an offering from a sort of isolated perspective.
And I think that comes down to, and I think as a result of COVID, based on what you're saying too, is that planners can rethink the way that their events are designed as well, because we need to think about the physical distancing. We need to think about the agenda but making those events more purposeful so that the cost of that doesn't come into a factor, right? What you're going to gain from that is so much more valuable than what that cost is.
And that's absolutely the case. Just the opportunity we have right now within food and beverage and within the business eventing environment and even social eventing environment to say we have the opportunity to redesign expectations and put forward an offering that is still a value proposition, but without all of the sort of traditionalist thinking, is for me the beauty of where we are right now. I think if any of the business event or the meeting event venues out there has a chef that has the capability to think outside of the box and move it to the next level, now is actually the time to give them that carte blanche, give them the freedom to come up with it. Obviously, understanding brand equity and everything else that plays a role. But this is the opportunity to redesign something and offer something that is unique but fit to purpose,
right?
As opposed to generic. And I think fit to purpose is exactly where we're heading. There's so much potential. I can't wait to explore the potential with people who are open-minded when it comes to food. If we're willing to explore a little, there's such an amazing experience ahead of us. We just need to remove the stumbling blocks and the restrictions and understanding that just send me your menu and I'll choose something from there.
Yeah.
For me, that era is passing. And if there is something, it should be, here's a breakfast, here's 2 breakfast options, there's a couple of lunch options, here's some tea options. But if you want to do something truly unique, engage with us, sit with us, let's plan with you. We can collaborate with you. We can support you in achieving a specific outcome for every event, whichever goal and purpose it serves, be it meetings, be it industry, be it promotional, be it social. Allow them to be partner to that, as opposed to just I'm not a great fan of the word service provider, because for me it has a kind of negative association. It's a distanced association. You're the service provider. I'm telling you what I want,
right,
and not listening to what you can offer.
There's so many nuggets in that, what you just said. I'm just so excited. The fit to purpose. I love that phrase. I did that, just is so awesome. And I love partner versus service provider, because you are providing so much something else. And it is a partnership when we're looking at that food. And one of the things that we were talking about before we came online is all of those people that you rely on to make that meal happen. And the delivery people, your farmers, your line cooks, the expediters, and then the front of the house staff. But we have to teach them as well in changing that mind shift to say, you're partners with us too, and that impact of that in the entire food chain, or what I call the event food chain, but it could just be the general food chain. I think that partnership comes from all of them. And instead of just saying, oh, I'm the A, B, C, D shift of server, this is my role, right? This is how I can make this experience better.
That is so true. There are so many role players in the actual delivery that hardly ever get noticed or recognized or even mentioned. And as you say, it literally starts from the supplier all the way through to the delivery, to the person who receives it, the one who manages the stock in terms of cold chain, hot chain, quality, expiry. There's a whole range of people involved, and regrettably, they often get left behind because it's only your frontline staff that get the recognition, because they are the ones who are noticed. And once we start explaining to every person, and not just explaining, physically showing them their involvement in the value chain and how they deliver the actual end product, whether they prepared it or served it is irrelevant. They were involved in the process. And once everyone realizes that every person playing a role, it's something you mentioned earlier, thanking someone who was cleaning a dustbin. It sounds odd and it sounds out of place, but a smelly dustbin is just not great. No. It puts people off eating. It's a negative experience. And every interaction along the way determines a guest experience. Everything from the moment they see something, they smell. There's a range of things that play a role in this, and we undervalue that. If one guest is unhappy because someone at the front door wasn't 100% friendly with them, they start with a negative mindset. They've had a negative experience in one area, and their focus automatically becomes what else is going to go wrong, as opposed to, wow, this is going to be a great experience.
Right.
It starts from the person at the security gate. It's a whole, again, back to the word holistic. It's a holistic service. It's not something that can work in isolation. The CSM or the event planner or the coordinator is not more important or more valuable than the person cleaning the dustbin. Because there might just be one person who absolutely loves clean dustbins, and seeing it happen sets him at ease. It gives him peace of mind. And his peace of mind is transferred to everyone around him because he's at ease, he's comfortable, he's not tense. There's such a follow-on effect from identifying and recognizing the smaller detail things that I think we undervalue.
Okay, so that makes me jump to the meal that you made for Peter. For Janet, for when Janet Spearstead was that. And just so everybody knows, I'm talking to Francois and Chef Francois from Pretoria, South Africa at the CSIR. And we're talking about holistic food and beverage experiences, which I just love. But Janice Bierstead was there a couple of years ago and was talking about neurological, brain food, etc. But one of the things that, and it comes down to that service level that we were just talking about, is that Peter loves chocolate mousse, and you made him a chocolate mousse that he thought he couldn't enjoy too much of because it would be bad for him. So talk about that. What did you do?
I was advised that Peter loves chocolate mousse, so I thought I'm gonna make him chocolate mousse that he won't forget. And sticking to the theme of brain food, we actually designed we presented a chocolate mousse that is made from avocado. It doesn't have sweeteners in it. It just has dark cocoa in, and the combination of the avocado and the coconut oil and cocoa itself presents a natural sweetness. Mm-hmm. And Peter had one of these, and he put it down and he said, "Look, I can't have more than one of these." And I was looking at him and I said, "Well, you can actually, because there's absolutely no sugars in there. There's no artificial colorants, and there's none of that in there. You can actually have more than them." And Peter was blown away. It was phenomenal. It was probably one of the most exciting moments I've seen him, because he could have as many chocolate mousses as he wanted without feeling guilty. So it was a great experience. And it was not just, I think, including chocolates that were sugar-free, absolutely sugar-free, with no artificial sweetness either. Mm-hmm. Where people suddenly started experiencing, but wait a minute, I mean, I can still have some of the really good stuff without having to worry about feeling guilty, not eating properly. And that's the type of food that when given the freedom to do so by either a guest or a host or a CSM or a coordinator, planner, when I'm allowed that freedom, I just thrive on giving you something that is completely different from what you expect. It's healthy, but it doesn't look healthy. It looks like I should be very careful with this, and it's not. It doesn't have to be.
Right. Okay, so we're at the 40-minute mark almost. So there's one thing that ties into that you said to me earlier, and then I'm going to ask you one other question, but it was your best practice, and it literally ties into what you just said, is that personal interaction with guests and delegates with an informative and demonstrative approach is invaluable. Mm-hmm. And you do that with food, with what you just said. And so what, can you add anything else to that in doing that?
I think it's such a powerful statement. Yeah. And it basically speaks for itself. But to sum it up, the only limitations we have in terms of food and beverage experience is the limitations we place on ourselves. And those limitations can be budgetary, it can be experiential, it could be a host of things. But in the end, we have to decide what the largest portion of our eventing expense, what value we want that to add to the overall experience. And once that mindset is changed, once we reach the point where we say, let's give it its rightful place, mm-hmm. I'm willing to say that most people would be pleasantly surprised. And over and above being pleasantly surprised, the experiences that can be gained from that, the value is irreplaceable. You think of weddings. What do people remember of weddings? The bride's dress and the food. You think of a range of other things. There's one or two things, but food will always be front and center of memory. Yep. So if you're allowed to create food that is a lasting memory, that cannot be bought with any amount of money. And we typically know, we have people who visit the CSIR ICC, and one of their first comments is, we always come here because the food is fantastic. they will not remember which venue they were in, and was there a comfortable seat? Did they have enough? Did they have a notepad or a pen? They won't remember that, but they do remember the food was phenomenal. Everyone spoke about the food.
Yep.
So giving it its rightful place, putting it front and center, and affording people the freedom to not just accept what is on offer, but challenge it and improve and promote it, I think is the biggest benefit of where we are right now.
Oh, I love that. So many nuggets inside of that as well. I could talk forever, but gonna end this. But we'll have you come back. Your favorite food. What is your favorite food?
So my favorite food is extremely unhealthy, but it is just something that I love. And that is, I'm a low and slow food style person. So everything that's cooked over a period of time, that is my passion. And anything that is artisanal, something hand created, something that is not commercially massive produced, something that's produced in someone's small little kitchen somewhere. Those are the items that I enjoy. I mean, there's a bakery that I love. They started off with a normal domestic oven, and they've progressed into a sort of building a massive pizza oven in which they do all their baking. Beautiful, the most beautiful breads. That's the type of food that I enjoy. I enjoy the type of food that takes effort to prepare, but once consumed, it has no equivalent. There's nothing that matches it.
Well, which then just reiterates everything else you've just said in the last 40 minutes. And which brings them back to your venue and brings them back, it's repeat business, and it's just the want of breaking bread and sitting down and enjoying a meal with somebody. So I so enjoyed this little nugget of conversation that we've had. So thank you so much for your time. And I know it's time for you to go eat dinner.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I thoroughly enjoy following you, following your posts, your podcasts. They are phenomenal. They energize me. And over the last couple of months, they've actually refocused me and had me recenter and realize there are more people out there that think like me, that reckon we don't have to be satisfied simply with what we get. We can challenge it. So thank you very much for having me. It's such an honor, and I'm truly blessed.
Right back at you. Okay, is one last question. Is South Africa open? Like I can get on a Delta plane and go visit you? Can I come see you?
Yeah, I can't see why not. There might be some tests and swabs and whatever at different points, but all of these are part of life and travel, I think, at this point in time. Okay. But it would be fantastic. We would absolutely love to have you. I know there's a couple of people that would be excited to have you around, and I personally would absolutely love that.
All right. Well, let's make that happen. Peter, what are we doing? Yes. All right.
I'm going to send him a message right now and say, come on, it's time.
It's time. It is time. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening in. Those who are listening to us over dinner in South Africa and those of us that are just waking up on the West Coast, I appreciate you listening in. This has been the Eating at a Meeting podcast, and we're here live every Wednesday on the Thrive Facebook page, Thrive Meetings Events Facebook page, and the Eating at a Meeting Facebook group. Join us every single week, but you can also listen to all of the podcasts. I think we're up to 70 episodes now on all podcast platforms. So stay safe and eat well. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.